Warm greetings from Dhaka, Bangladesh. I am Sabir Hossain Chaudhary, Member of Parliament from the constituency of Dhaka, the capital city of Bangladesh. And I'm very happy and very privileged to be able to welcome all of you, excellencies and distinguished guests, to the launch of the CVF Global Parliamentary Group. From 2014 to 2017, I also had the privilege and honor of serving as the president of the Inter-Parliamentary Union. So I would first of all like to extend a warm welcome to all of you to the launch of this parliamentary group, CBF Global Parliamentary Group. And I'm pleased to be joining you today, both as a moderator spells devastating news for the most climate vulnerable countries. We are at the brink of reaching the 1.5 degrees Celsius limit that was outlined in the Paris Agreement 10 years earlier than expected. And we don't actually have any more time. In fact, we don't even have a year to get things right. It is clear thus that COP26 has to deliver a climate emergency plan, and with it, the delivery plan for the USD 500 billion of climate finance from 2020 to 2024 as a COP decision as Glasgow, and to constantly raise ambition until 2025 to combat the global climate emergency. Before we begin, just a few housekeeping notes for all of you as guidance. First is we ask that those not speaking to please mute your microphones. This is very important so that we can hear everyone very clearly. Number two, we also have translation available and it's in French. So if you go to the bottom of your screen, you will see there's an interpretation button that you can click, and so you can have French translation. Number three, we are also live streaming this event. And so this is going out live. It's not just virtually those who are attending, but we have a global audience through the live streaming. And for, of course, the very basic and golden rule of time management. And because of the constraints that we have, we please ask all speakers to adhere to the time that has been allocated. My gratitude and appreciation to our partners, the Inter-Parliamentary Union and the Global Center for Adaptation. So it is the CVF working in close cooperation and tandem with them in this launch event. And of course, a warm thanks to the CVF's parliamentary champions, some of whom are with us here today. I would now like to request the Secretariat to please play the CVF V20 presentation video, and then we will move on to the keynote statements from our distinguished guests and excellencies.
Thank you, Chair. We are putting up the video in about a minute.
I think it's coming up. Are we, the Secretariat, are we having issues in?
Yes, we're having a bit of issue, but I think we're getting it set up in about.
Do you expect to
15 seconds.
fix it shortly or?
Yes, sir, we do, about 15 seconds. Sorry, thank you.
Okay, so I ask for your patience. Although we are in a highly digital world, glitches appear once in a while to remind us that we are reliant on them.
Okay, we seem to be having audio difficulty, so perhaps, Chair, we could move to the next session.
Okay.
Thank you.
So we will move on now. As I mentioned, there are a number of keynote statements that we have, and it's from a very distinguished pool of individuals. And it is now my very great pleasure to introduce His Excellency, Mr. Ban Ki-moon, who is the current chair of the Global Center on Adaptation, and as we all know, the 8th Secretary General of the United Nations. Excellency, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Chair. I think we are there's a parallel meeting happening at the moment, so we will come back to His Excellency, and we can proceed to the next speaker. Thank you.
Shall I move on then?
Yes, sir.
And I saw him very briefly as I came on and signed online. My good friend, His Excellency, Mr. Martin Chungong, Secretary General of the Parliamentary Union. He is, of course, the first non-European to be elected as IPU Secretary General. And it was my real pleasure to work with him. And it's very good to see him continuing to work for democracy and engagement of parliamentarians in the global discourse on very many important issues. Mr. Secretary General, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, dear Saber. Great to see you today. I don't know what time it is in Bangladesh, but in this virtual world, time is no longer an issue. I would like Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, to say how pleased I am on behalf of the Interparliamentary Union to take the floor today at what I consider a very momentous occasion when you are about to launch the CVF Parliamentary Group. I would like to take this opportunity to say that the IPU with CVF to launch this parliamentary group, because we are deeply convinced of the important role that parliaments play. I am not here today to lecture you on what it is that parliaments have to do in the current context of the climate crisis. I think that it is very clear from what we are hearing from the scientific community. They have said loud and clear that humans' role in the climate crisis is unequivocal, and the 1.5 Celsius target is slipping beyond reach. The clock is ticking, and there is a need to take urgent action because dealing with a crisis, to avoid what would become an irreversible crisis. Immediate, rapid, and large-scale cuts to greenhouse gas emissions are mandatory to maintain the goals set by the Paris Agreement, and parliamentarians, as I said earlier, have a critical role to play in ensuring its implementation through legislative, budgetary oversight, and representational functions. The upcoming COP20 is a chance not to be missed in the fight against climate change, and it must deliver in providing solutions for a global and long-term perspective, including addressing the issue of financing for both adaptation and mitigation. The importance of parliamentary engagement in promoting coherent national legislative responses to climate change aligned with the Paris Agreement cannot be stressed enough. As the members of the representative body, the foremost representative body in any country, parliaments and parliamentarians are uniquely positioned to lead the path towards decarbonization and sustainability in the post-pandemic era and transform the climate commitments into realities on the ground. We at the Interparliamentary Union, the Global Organization of Parliaments, have continued to support the engagement of parliaments in the context of the annual Conference of Parties, COP, through the organization of parliamentary meetings. Just a couple of weeks ago, we were organizing this big meeting in Rome in prelude to what is going to take place in Glasgow. And I was very heartened to witness high-level commitment from parliamentarians across the world, including the Speaker of the House of Representatives of the US Congress. So there is global awareness within the parliamentary community of what parliaments need to do. We need now political commitment. And we hope that as we go to Glasgow in a couple of weeks, we are going to continue to mobilize and marshal that political commitment so parliaments can more robustly engage in the implementation of the climate change agreement, Paris Agreement. I would like to say that we do recognize that implementing or contributing to the implementation of that agreement would pose major challenges to some parliaments. And I think it is for that reason that you are launching this parliamentary group of the CVF. The IPU will continue to work with you to build tools such as the one we have developed with UNDRR on disaster risk reduction, how parliaments can work to reduce the effects of disasters and climate-related risks. We will continue to work to develop tools such as the one with the United Nations Environment Programme to promote parliamentary action towards a greener recovery from the pandemic. I hope that with the launch of this parliamentary group, we can work together to make the voice of Parliament heard louder and clearer in international fora. But I also think that it is important that at the national level where it matters, parliaments should be more forthcoming in mobilizing political commitment to implement those functions that they have enshrined in their constitutions, making laws that are responsive to the climate crisis, allocating resources for the implementation of the Paris Agreement, and holding the feet of government to the fire to ensure that those commitments that have been undertaken are effectively implemented at the national level and reported thereon in different fora. With those few words, I would like to wish our deliberations lots of success, and I am pinning a lot of hope on the successful outcome of this parliamentary group being launched today. Thank you very much, Saber.
Thank you so much, Martin, for your very wise words and also for your solidarity with the work of the CVF. This is one of the most important and defining challenges that we face, and we also look forward to working with the Global Organization of National Parliaments, the Interparliamentary Union. Thank you again. Secretariat, are we ready with His Excellency Mr. Ban Ki-moon, or should we move on?
Chair, we can move on and Mr. Ban Ki-moon can be at the very end. And we are also set for videos as well in case we want to come to that.
Okay. So let's quickly have a look at the video, and then we will come back to the keynote statements. Thank you, everyone, for your understanding. Thank you. Secretariat, are we going to show the video now? Should we move with the keynote statements? We have Her Excellency Lauren Lagarda from the Philippines. Do we go with her or do we go with the video?
Yes, sir. We can move on to Senator Lagarda. Thank you.
Okay. So it is now my pleasure to introduce a fellow parliamentarian, an outstanding individual who has been working tirelessly in the Philippines, Her Excellency Ms. Lauren Lagarda. She is the Deputy Speaker of the Philippines Congress and the CVF Thematic Ambassador for Parliaments. Excellency, the floor is yours.
Thank you, my good friend Saber Chowdhury, Excellencies, esteemed colleagues. The clock is ticking. Climate change is now accelerating, and this spells economic and financial disruption and destruction while leaving behind devastation for the world's most climate vulnerable developing countries. Climate change worsens what is already an increasingly difficult cost of capital challenges, and it accentuates the fact that the maturity of private capital to vulnerable countries is also in short supply. Vulnerable country parliaments must challenge and complement the executive departments to dramatically raise climate ambition. It is time to take a far more active role in helping steer our people away from the dire threats of the climate emergency and to move closer and closer towards climate prosperous pathways. Let us rise together. If countries historically responsible for the climate crisis won't act with urgency, we must act in concert to compel them to take responsibility. We must, in parallel, set a path for ourselves to secure a low carbon and a climate resilient future. We must begin with enabling the CVF's call for a climate emergency pact, including annual ambition raising, until we safeguard the 1.5 degrees Celsius limit of the Paris Agreement. And the V20 call for a delivery plan of at least $100 billion per year in climate finance, or $500 billion until 2024. It is important that ambition is complemented by the right economic and financial support structures. That is why it is critical we support the V20 group of finance ministers to mobilize climate finance and de-risking financial flows to our economies. The proposed CVF Global Parliamentary Group lends further impetus to climate action and establishes a dedicated work plan of legislative activities into the future that will help to drive Paris Agreement implementation, sustainable development goals, the Sendai framework for disaster risk reduction delivery, and planetary prosperity through climate prosperity plans. The 4 activity areas for the CVF Global Parliamentary Group include: 1. Best practices to support active collaboration towards ambitious and effective climate action in line with the climate prosperity agenda. 2. Knowledge resources to commission analysis that generates an inventory of good practices and legislation that form a useful body of resources to support CVF parliamentarians to take action within member legislatures. 3. Legislative agenda to work together on a unified political manifesto of CVF parliamentarians, including developing a shared legislative framework to guide key legislative measures to be taken by CVF parliaments in order to effectively pursue the CVF planetary prosperity agenda. We can also pilot special motions that are critical to issues such as high share of renewable energy and making accessible climate and disaster risk financing, among many others. We have partners in this space, including the Global Renewables Congress, UNDRR, and INSU Resilience Global Partnership. 4. International outreach to engage in dialogue and collaborative actions with parliaments and parliamentarians from outside the member states of CVF in order to encourage ambitious climate response and robust international partnership for action. Excellencies, esteemed colleagues, hard-fought development gains and productivity will continue to be undermined or reversed if the 1.5-degree limit of the Paris Agreement is breached. We need unprecedented global collaboration. Let us take this global step together through the CVF Global Parliamentary Group. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Loren, and also for amplifying on how the work of the CVF Global Parliamentary Group is going to be organized under the various themes that you very correctly mentioned. We will now go to the Maldives from the Philippines, and we are pleased to have Honorable Hassan Latif, is Chair of General Purposes Committee of the Majlis of the Maldives, the Parliament of the Maldives. The floor is yours, Excellency.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, distinguished participants, it is of great pleasure for me to be here at the Climate Vulnerable Forum Parliamentary Group launching event, which has brought together so many eminent leaderships working towards the creation of newer, better policies and endorsing more effective action against the throes of the ever-evolving issues surrounding climate change that comes to affect our vulnerable nations. The importance of this forum knows no bounds, as it gives the most vulnerable a chance to voice out our concerns and helps us garner attention to the issues and conditions already at play due to the rapid advance of climate change. Mr. President, distinguished participants, it is also an immense honor to have the current Speaker of the People's Majlis and former President of Maldives, Honorable Mohammed Nasheed, appointed as the CVF's thematic ambassador for ambition. With a country as vulnerable as ours, President Nasheed has always been at the forefront in the fight against climate change. By bringing ideas of better development strategies, debt restructuring, climate prosperity plans, and so on, I believe President Nasheed's leadership will help us implement the aforementioned and more, and help us the more active action against climate change. Mr. President, distinguished participants, climate action and climate change issues are of utmost priority to our Parliament, which can be seen from the work carried out by the recent established Environment and Climate Change Committee of the People's Majlis of Maldives. From carrying out research work to taking preventive measures, as well as monitoring the ins and outs of Maldivian authorities relating to environment and climate change, it is worth noting the exceptional active work of the Parliamentary Committee has been performing since its formation in 2019. I would like to take this opportunity to thank all of you. There are too many of you to thank individually for all your contributions. Mr. President, before I conclude, I would like to make a proposition. The Parliament of the Maldives is ever ready to take charge in maintaining the CVF's secretariat. And I hope we are able to work together to garner productive outcomes from this forum to ensure effective climate change. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you so much, Excellency, for your words. And I'm sure the Secretariat has made due note of your readiness, not just merely to engage, but also assist actively in the running of the Secretariat. I would now like to call upon the Secretariat to see if we can have the presentation video that has been done for the CVF V20. Is that ready now? Can we play that, please?
Yes, we can. Thank you.
Thank you.
The world is burning, but climate vulnerable countries like ours are not prepared to become the first victims of climate change. Instead, we must do everything in our power to keep our heads above water.
The world is at the edge of the cliff of surpassing the Paris Agreement's 1.5 degrees centigrade limit. This is a clear point of no return.
Well, that was a short but a very powerful video, and all identify with the themes that were captured in that video presentation. Now, I would like to try again to see whether we can connect with His Excellency, Mr. Ban Ki-moon. Secretariat, are we able to do that now?
No, sir, Mr. Chaudhary. He will come in at the end of the agenda, towards the end of this entire meeting at this point.
Okay, so it'll be good to have him because he's someone that a lot of us have worked with. I know Martin, you and I both work very closely with him. He has always been a great advocate for parliamentary engagement. And I think it's absolutely right that we hear him today as we launch this very important forum. I now move to the United Kingdom, who's of course the host of COP26, and they have the COP26 presidency, a very important role. And we are very pleased to welcome and introduce from them Mr. Darren Jones, is the Labour Member of Parliament for Bristol Northwest, and he is also the chair of the House of Commons Business, Energy and Industrial Strategy Committee. You have the floor, sir.
Mr. Chaudhary, we're running ahead of schedule and Mr. Jones will be available in about 15 minutes. And so perhaps we can move to the Parliament's open Parliament session. Thank you.
Okay. We will now move on to the parliamentarian roundtable section. which will be a statement by the member countries. And we would request all of you to adhere to the time. And before I do that, let me thank you, Excellencies, for the important views on the CVF Global Parliamentary Group in light of COP26 and, of course, beyond COP26, because this is going to be an ongoing engagement, a marathon rather than a 100-meter sprint. And what we have done, this is just for your guidance and information, as we have tried to have three components to this session, and with members making statements on three major focus areas. And I think you will all appreciate that these are extremely relevant. So the first one is, how do you see your parliament's participation in this new parliamentary group? And how will it be a valuable new platform? In other words, how can you add value? How can you do things which you have not been able to do so far? The second, of course, is a very basic but a very important question in terms of what are your parliament's expectations from COP26? So what do you think COP26 can, will, and should deliver? And the third is going to be your expression of interest, your solidarity, your support for the parliamentary group charter and suggestions for the work program. We would like to be very inclusive in our approach. We want to be guided by what you consider the real areas to be where we can add value and not basically duplicate what others might be doing. So I think these are all very important aspects of the work of the Global Parliamentary Group. For the first part, on how you see Parliament's participation in the new parliamentary group and how it will be a value platform, I now invite CVF members to please take the floor, and for the Secretariat to assist in maintaining the speakers list. I have here, and I'm not sure whether that corresponds with your list, Secretariat, the Honorable Vice President of the National Assembly of Burkina Faso, Mr. Batio Bassier. Is that who we are expecting, His Excellency? And I would also draw the attention of all distinguished participants to the chat box. The Secretariat is sending you various messages. They're also saying that if anyone is interested to take the floor, in addition to the names that we have, we will of course try to accommodate. And since we have a little bit of time in our hands, we can try to do that. So, Secretariat, can you please run through the list and call upon the honorable members to speak?
Mr. Sir, you have the floor.
Uno, sí, sí. Ahora.
Mr. Batio, sir, you may unmute your microphone to have the floor.
Perhaps Secretariat, we can move on to the next.
Yes, sir, we can. We will check in with Mr. Batio on the microphone.
So we'll move on to the next question, which I had just outlined, which is if you would please share your expectations for COP26 in Glasgow. And I have the distinct pleasure of introducing the Honorable Speaker of the Parliament of Bangladesh, Dr. Shireen Sharmin Chowdhury, to share her thoughts and perspectives on the matter. You have the floor, Honorable Speaker.
Thank you, Mr. President. Climate change threatens our lives, very existence and survival. We parliamentarians must therefore seize this opportune moment in COP26 at Glasgow this November and act unitedly now to protect and save our planet from existential threat of climate change. COP26 provides the platform to revisit our long commitments since 1992, agreeing to UNFCCC to control greenhouse gas emissions, signing of the Paris Climate Agreement in 2015, setting the goal to keep global temperature below 1.5 degrees Celsius. Now, therefore, is the time to call upon all concerned to act upon our agreed pledges. First, in the backdrop of IPCC special report termed as a Code Red for Humanity by UN Secretary General Guterres, we must act to keep global temperature below 1.5 degrees Celsius. We must strive to secure net zero greenhouse gas emissions by 2050. We must act to achieve the objectives of Paris Agreement and finalize Paris Rule Book. Our Honorable Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina of Bangladesh leads the Climate Vulnerable Forum, representing vulnerable developing countries. We therefore urge COP26 platform the developed countries to facilitate the green recovery of vulnerable countries through grants, subsidies, tax relief geared towards green recovery. Delivery of $100 billion by developed countries, the pledge, every year from 2020 onwards, is an urgent and pressing matter and must be materialized. Developed countries should put forward a delivery plan for the UN agreed $500 billion of climate finance for post-2025 years. Bangladesh demands balanced distribution of climate fund between adaptation and mitigation, 50-50. Bangladesh, committed to reduce carbon emission, has cancelled plans to build 10 coal-fired power plants. We reiterate the resolution adopted by Bangladesh Parliament calling upon parliamentarians, governments, UN and all stakeholders to work on a war footing as custodians and as one team to protect and fortify our planet. Global community must act urgently and decisively in facing the climate change crisis. Bangladesh has drafted Mujib Climate Prosperity Plan 2030 to achieve energy independence, maximizing share of renewable energy and energy efficient technology, and of developing its economy on a low carbon pathway. Bangladesh is setting its trajectory from one of vulnerability to resilience and to prosperity. VRP. Let us take the resolve to confront the planetary emergency and to act together to protect and safeguard our planet, our only home. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker of the Parliament of Bangladesh, for not only capturing the essence of what the expectations are. In fact, I would say it's not really an expectation, it's an imperative. And this is for our survival, the planet's survival. And we all know that extinction is forever. We can't reverse that process. So this is the time for action, and the clock is ticking, as the previous speakers have also spoken. I would now like to invite Honorable Giona G. Labad, Honorable Member of Parliament, the District Representative of the House of Representatives of the Philippines. You have the floor.
Thank you, Your Honor. On behalf of Speaker Lord Alan Velasco of the House of Representatives of the Congress of the Philippines, where our esteemed Deputy Speaker Lauren Legarda is a part of the Chamber's leadership, we sincerely express our utmost commendation to all the organizers involved in today's launching of the Climate Vulnerable Forum Global Parliamentary Group, convening a community of parliamentarians towards a common goal to act upon the climate crisis is not just a mere activity worthy of praise, but it is a pursuit heeding a dire need that requires an undivided commitment from all sectors of society and all walks of life because of its evident urgency. As parliamentarians whose responsibility is legislating measures and budgets, we have a pivotal role in securing climate justice. Being granted the trust and confidence of our constituents whose interests and needs we represent, our duty is to act pronto. With a series of catastrophic events in the world over, especially in the world's poorest and most vulnerable communities like ours, there is a tremendous uproar to secure climate justice here and now. These parliamentarians' group aspirations for an active collaboration among members is certainly a great venue for the varied insights and proposals exchanged to determine the most suitable mitigation and adaptation strategies to combat also as with 5% projected greenhouse gas emission reduction and avoidance, of which 2.71% is unconditional and 72.29% is conditional, representing the country's ambition for GHG mitigation for the period 2020-2030. In the contribution conveys the country's progressive climate change mitigation, commitment, and adaptation challenges. That includes addressing residual loss and damage in the pursuit of local carbon, sustainable and climate and disaster resilient development. COP26 is fast approaching. We should have expectant hearts that the commitments and goals to the Paris Agreement, Sustainable Development Goals, and Sendai Framework for Disaster Risk Reduction Delivery, among other international agreements, will then room to be realized. But most importantly, as highly susceptible states, we should, experts in the field have sternly warned us, this much awaited convention in Glasgow might be humanity's last shot to stave off the irreversible fury of climate change. Thank you, Your Honor.
Thank you so much for your views. And distinguished participants, as you have already heard, the Honorable Speaker of the Bangladesh Parliament also spoke about it. The CVF member states are putting forward the Climate Emergency Pact, this is basically for annual ambition raising. So we don't talk in terms of 20 years or 30 years. We are saying what we are going to do on an annual basis, on a yearly basis, until we safeguard the 1.5 degrees Celsius limit. And as you know from the latest IPCC report, we are already at 1.2. So the margin for error is almost non-existent. You know, we are almost there. So it is immediate action. It is going to be heightened ambitions, which is needed to keep our people and our economy safe. We also call for a delivery plan of the $500 billion in climate finance as part of this pact. So it is not just commitment. We actually want to see how this is going to be delivered. And we need to have a specific time-bound plan, a roadmap that will ensure that this is actually delivered and not just remain as a pledge. So this is, very important for you to know, because this is what the CVF is advocating for. And I'm sure when we do that, we speak for all of the climate vulnerable countries. In fact, we speak for the whole world, because at the end of the day, everyone is vulnerable. It's not just the 48 countries that we identified today. I would now like to move on and give the floor to the Honorable President of the Chamber of Deputies of the Dominican Republic, His Excellency Alfredo Pacheco. You have the floor. Excellency, you have the floor. Secretariat, is His Excellency there, or should we move on?
His Excellency is here, but I think we may have mic issues, but I think Mr. Darren Jones is here as well from the UK, and perhaps we can jump to him, sir.
Okay. Really delighted to be able to request Mr. Darren Jones. I've given his introduction earlier to share his thoughts with us as a keynote statement today in this global launch of the parliamentary group of CVF countries. You have the floor, sir.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you to the Secretariat for organising this meeting today and inviting me to be with you and to speak to you in the final few weeks before COP26 starts here in the UK in Glasgow. I'm a member of the House of Commons and the chair of the Business, Energy and Industrial Strategy Select Committee. The chair of my committee, as the chair of the committee, I'm responsible for leading accountability of government ministers and the scrutiny of their work in the delivery of our net zero targets. And so the government has, in the past week here in the UK, published its net zero strategy, which sets out in detail how ministers expect to deliver on their climate change targets here in the United Kingdom. And select committees in our parliamentary system play a very important role in looking at the detail of government plans, requesting information and asking ministers questions to ensure that they are delivering on their promises for people in our country. And here in the UK, we have a number of priority sectors which are shared with many countries around the world, including how we decarbonize our production of electricity, how we heat our homes and cool our homes, and how we have more energy efficient buildings, how we decarbonize our transport away from petrol and diesel vehicles to electric vehicles, and how we help energy intensive industries, whether it's agriculture or steel making, to be able to go about their business, but with less production of carbon dioxide. And international collaboration is really very important. We all have our own jobs to do in our own countries to hold our governments to account for the delivery of the commitments that will be made in Glasgow in a few weeks' time. But of course, we know from our work in preparing for COP, and as we will see at COP over the course of the next few weeks, that this has to be a global conversation, not just at the times when we come together for COP, as we will in Glasgow this year and next year in Egypt, but on a continuous basis. And one of my observations as the chair of a scrutiny committee in the House of Commons is that the international networks for legislators, for parliamentarians, as opposed to ministers, is not as well developed. And that's why I'm delighted to support the initiative of CVF here today and other international collaborations, because it's important that we continue to talk with each other on an ongoing basis about how efforts are rolling out in our own countries, but also what more countries need to do together. We've heard already of some of the initiatives being put forward by CVF in relation to the Global Pact, and also the understandable commitment and focus on the international aid commitments being made by wealthy nations, both in Paris, but also having to be reaffirmed at COP26. And it's important that we all understand how that money is being delivered and how it's helping countries such as yours and others to be able to do the work that it needs to do. Because of course, it is then our job as legislators in countries such as the United Kingdom to be able to hold our own ministers to account for their promises around climate aid and the delivery of climate aid commitments around the world. And of course, this isn't just about money, it's also about sharing innovations and skills and research and helping each other to understand how we can meet our shared objectives in the most productive and effective possible way, both for our countries, but also for our people. And so, as I say, COP26 is of course a global effort, but I support endeavours such as this to continue the conversation between COPs so that we can share the scrutiny of our respective governments around the world in the delivery of these global initiatives and global efforts so that we can get this right as quickly as possible in order to reach our Paris Agreement, to try to limit global temperature growth to 1.5 degrees C above pre-industrial levels as much as possible. That's why forums such as this are crucial, and why once again I'd like to say thank you to CVF, to the Secretariat, and for all of you for coming today. And thank you once again for inviting me to speak and to be part of your next network. At which point I will hand back to you, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so very much for your thoughts. And of course, the important message about holding governments to account, scrutiny, international cooperation, global solidarity, absolute key if we want to have progress on this matter and turn words into action, which is really what we are talking about at the end of the day. So I will try now to move back to the Dominican Republic and request the Honorable President of the Chamber of Deputies, Alfredo Pacheco, If you would kindly speak, sir.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman and the members of the Climate Vulnerable Forum. I'm Congressman Orlando Jorge Villegas, representing the President of the Chamber of Deputies of the Dominican Republic, Alfredo Pacheco. It's an honor to be with you this morning. The Dominican Republic is one of the 10 most vulnerable countries to the climate change. And we are obviously very enthusiastic about the COP26 forum coming on November. And as a country, this new government presided by President Luis Abinader and the Congress, as also Senate and Chamber of Deputies, we are legislating to support the government in reducing greenhouse gas emissions. And also we are working on having this reduction of greenhouse gas emissions on a 27% by 2050, which is the road that this government has traced for the following years. And there's a very ambitious agenda to continue working on combating climate change in the Dominican Republic. We only, right now, we have emissions of greenhouse gases by 0.06%, but as I told before, we're very vulnerable. One of the 10 most vulnerable countries to climate change. And inside the Dominican Republic, we have 13 provinces that are very highly vulnerable to the effects of climate change. So as a country, we're also working, as many of the members of this climate change, of this Climate Vulnerable Forum told before, to work with other countries in combating the effects of climate change. We're also, after this COVID-19 pandemic, we're working on green jobs, as we call them, where we want more people to work within our environment. We're looking also forward to also change our energetic, most of our energy sources. We want more renewable energy. We're also working on that in the Dominican Republic, so that part of the greenhouse gas emissions that come from some energy sources could be reduced, and we could rely mostly on renewable energies. So we're looking also forward to working with other countries and with other multilateral organisms to have some kind of finance support on combating climate change. You know that as a third world country, developing country, the Dominican Republic is looking for help in financing many of our strategies that we have for combating climate change. And as our president, Luis Abinader, has told in other forums, there's kind of, we're not working in equal terms as many other countries in the region and in the world in having access to financing for combating climate change. So we want that in this COP26 forum that is in November, that we can agree with other countries to work on having finance help to combating and support our strategies for climate change. So the Dominican Republic is committed to work against climate change, is committed to work for green jobs, is committed to work for having more energy sources coming from renewable energy, and we are committed to reducing the greenhouse gases emissions that come from many sectors and areas in our country. So we support all these ideas that we're sharing here in this Climate Vulnerable Forum, and we're looking forward to work with all the other countries and all our colleagues and members of states in the next COP26 forum in Glasgow, Scotland. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing a very important perspective from the Dominican Republic. As I mentioned during the introduction to this segment, there were 3 questions or the 3 parts that we wanted to focus on and get your views. The third part is, of course, very important. And this is where we want to have suggestions and recommendations from you on the work program and how you may support the work of the parliamentary group. Any suggestions you have, any comments you have on the charter, and we'll be very pleased to take them on board, because we want to be member focused, we want to be member driven, And so whatever suggestions you have, please do feel to share them either today or going forward. The Secretary is always there to assist you. I see that there are a number of hands that have been raised. I believe the Honorable Distinguished Representative from Kenya would like to speak. There's also the Democratic Republic of Congo. I see they have raised their virtual hand. And of course, Burkina Faso, I understand the audio issues that you've had are no longer there. So may I invite the distinguished representative from Kenya to please take the floor and make your intervention.
Thank you very much. I'm Charity Kadhambi Chepkonye, Member of Parliament from Kenya. Let me start first by thanking the entire team for this fantastic organization of this meeting for the parliamentarians. And let me also start by just proposing my few comments in relation with the entire Climate Vulnerable Forum. The first issue, let me start by saying that the word itself, Climate Vulnerable Forum, it really excites me because I come from Africa. Africa continent is a vulnerable continent. My country, Kenya, is vulnerable in relation with climate change. And actually what we are saying, it is very true. All of us, globally, we are agreeing that climate change is a reality. It has affected all of us. Like in Kenya, we have a lot of challenge when it comes to the issues of lands, droughts. Right now, our country are just dying in northern part of Kenya. The pastoralists have suffered so much. We have a lot of challenge when it comes to the scarcity of water. We have a lot of challenge when it comes to the matters of also technology. And also, my first suggestion to the Climate Vulnerable Forum, it is what I'm expecting or what I'm proposing first. It's the entire topic of climate change is a big challenge when it comes to the members of parliament or parliamentarians, whereby the capacity building is a big issue. There's a lot of loophole. Therefore, I'm expecting through this forum, we are going to lobby most of the members of parliament globally so that we can have a good forum which is going to be active, where we are going to be sharing different issues we have. Therefore, let me first also appreciate that Kenya is the first country in Africa to have a policy in relation with the climate change, which is the Climate Act for 2016, which actually has a lot of issues, which has a lot of issues which has in the country. It is also to note that Kenya is actually leading when it comes to the matters of climate change. Therefore, the big question as a member of parliament I would be raising today, or probably I would also expect, it's my expectation when it comes to the COP 2026, I'm expecting to understand the matters of climate change finance. Well, I would propose for the vulnerable countries or developing countries, let us talk about the finances as grants, not like loans, because it's actually becoming a big burden to the vulnerable or to the developing countries. Also, another issue I wish also to raise on this matter, it is what am I expecting when it comes to the COP 26 in relation with Africa as a continent or Kenya? I'm expecting, as we talk about all these climate change matters, let us, the global world, take it that we are not equal, we totally differ. Some countries are very developed, others we are just struggling, we are working in relation with this matter. But I'm expecting one of the agendas to be accepted this COP26, that Africa issues agenda is that there are different other challenges, circumstances, more than even climate change. Therefore, I'm expecting the agenda or the Africa continent to be noted that it has a lot of challenge when it comes to the climate change matters. But generally also to say to the Climate Vulnerable Forum, I have a lot of expectations that this is going to be a forum where we are going to be sharing our ideas, our opportunities, our challenges, our solutions, we are also going to have a platform where other people can share about different technologies, probably skills. I'm also expecting on this forum, because in Africa, over 70% are women who live in rural homes, and in Africa, probably in Kenya is championing in relation to increase the forest cover to 10%. Therefore, there's a challenge of clean cooking, and when we introduce clean cooking in Africa or in Kenya, this is another way we are going to make sure that the forest increment is going to increase. Therefore, this is a good forum. We are so happy that you have started it, that it is going to empower us and to bring us together, all of us. And also, let me say also, our intention as members of parliament from Kenya, apart from having an environmental committee on environment and natural resources, we still have a caucus for the Parliament of Renewable Energy and the Climate Change caucus, which we are expecting to do. We continue lobbying other members of parliament so that we can have forums which we can be talking these matters of climate change. We are also expecting a lot of partnerships from other people, from other caucuses of other parliament, so that we can partner all of us as a stronger team through CF, this climate vulnerable forum. Therefore, thank you so much for the few minutes you have given me. It is really fantastic to be here. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And we could almost feel your passion for the cause, and thank you for those views from Africa. The next COP, of course, is going to be in Egypt, and that's being hailed as the Africa COP, a very significant milestone that is coming up. Let me just acknowledge who else will be speaking, because I've seen the hands raised. The first is going to be the Democratic Republic of Congo. And after that, I will go to Burkina Faso, and then I will go to the Parliament of Bhutan. Secretariat, if there are any other members, please notify me. I think we have some time in hand, but I leave it to you also in terms of time management. And I believe Paula also wants to speak. So let's start with Congo, Burkina Faso, Bhutan, and then Paula. You have the floor, Madam. Congo.
Merci de m'avoir accordé la parole. Je m'appelle Moukala Kionde Célestine Hortense. Je suis sénatrice de la République démocratique du Congo. Je remercie aussi de m'avoir donné cette opportunité de m'exprimer dans ce grand forum. Je loue cette initiative et je souhaiterais à ce que ces occasions puissent se multiplier pour que nous puissions avoir des opportunités pour échanger sur ce grand problème, sur ce problème qui est très important, sur le changement climatique. En matière de changement climatique, à mon humble avis, je pense que la RDC est la solution à cause de notre forêt et en plus du tourbière. Pour pouvoir garder la forêt intacte et sauver et protéger la planète, nous avons besoin de l'aide de la communauté internationale. Et surtout, j'aimerais dire aussi merci à toutes les institutions parlementaires du monde entier qui assistent à ce forum, à ce que nous puissions nous souder les coudes, nous puissions pousser tous ensemble dans la même direction à ce que notre planète soit sauvée. Parce que la situation dans laquelle nous sommes aujourd'hui, c'est une situation très délicate. Très délicate en ce sens que les forêts sont en train de s'amenuiser. Or, on a besoin de l'intégralité de toutes les forêts pour que l'air puisse être renouvelé et pour que la planète soit protégée. Pour ça, nous avons un grand rôle à jouer, nous, c'est-à-dire tous les parlementaires du monde entier. Je remercie la communauté internationale à ce qu'ils puissent aider la RDC pour que nous puissions sauvegarder l'intégralité de notre forêt. La forêt de la RDC ne constitue pas seulement une solution pour la République démocratique du Congo ou seulement pour l'Afrique, elle constitue une solution pour le monde entier. Par conséquent, nous avons besoin de plus de bras, de plus de cerveau et de plus de force pour que nous puissions pousser dans le même sens. Je finirai ma petite intervention en disant un grand merci aux organisateurs et que la prochaine fois, que vous puissiez encore nous inviter. Merci.
Thank you so much for that view from the Congo and underscoring the importance and the vital role that forests play, the importance of ecosystems and the need to preserve diversity through the forest. Thank you for that. Would now like to invite the Parliament of Bhutan, and then I'll go to Palau. May I request both distinguished members who are going to speak to limit your intervention to 3 minutes, please, because we would like to finish on time in the interest of time management and discipline. Thank you for your understanding. Parliament of Bhutan, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. Excellencies and distinguished delegates. Today, on the occasion of the launch of the Climate Vulnerable Forum, let me take this opportunity to extend to you the good wishes and warm greetings of His Majesty the King, Her Majesty the Queen, and the people of Bhutan. It is an honor and privilege for me and my delegation to be participating in this forum. We all are aware that the main objective for the launch of the establishment of this global parliamentary group is to support the active collaboration of members of parliament of the Climate Vulnerable Forum member states to pursue greater climate commitment and planetary prosperity action. Excellencies and distinguished delegates, climate change is a global problem, and its impacts are not limited to individual nations, but felt worldwide. Bhutan is also highly vulnerable to the impacts of climate change and faces increasing threats from climate hazards. More than 60% of the Bhutanese population is engaged in agriculture activities. Due to climate change, we are facing challenges in agriculture production and food security. Recently, our country experienced very heavy rains coinciding with the harvest season. The paddy fields belonging to many farmers across the country were flooded, and the harvested paddies were drenched and damaged. This unfortunate incident has crushed the hopes of the farmers, and it is very disheartening to see them suffer the losses, which may have been caused by the impact of climate change. Fortunately, upon His Majesty's command, farmers whose paddy fields were affected by the recent rainfall are all assured relief funds. Bhutan continues to face erratic weather patterns, leading to unexpected flash floods, resulting in significant damages to our limited infrastructure. Currently, our major road networks have also suffered with landslides occurring in many areas, blocking the delivery of essential supplies and not allowing people to come in from one region to another. Then there is the premature melting of our precious glaciers, which is the primary source of our swift-flowing rivers that feeds the hydropower industry. This not only threatens our country's largest revenue earner, but lives as well, with the risks of glacier lake outburst floods. Excellencies and distinguished delegates, Bhutan is committed to remain carbon neutral to benefit the present and future generations. As per the Constitution of Bhutan, we are mandated to maintain a minimum of 60% of our land area under forest cover. And as of now, the forest coverage is maintained at more than 70%, which is one of the largest in any Asian country. I'm happy to share that even as we discuss climate change in this forum, different institutions in Bhutan are already observing a climate action week titled Rising Climate Ambition, a Voice from Bhutan. While our humble action may or may not impact the world, we are taking our roles seriously in this interconnected global village. We can already see, feel, and hear the threat of climate change, and if left unchecked, we will fully experience its mass impact. I am in absolute fear that the world we inherit to our younger generation may not be the one they deserve. I feel they deserve a much better world. Otherwise, we are to be blamed, and the curse would be much heavier than we can imagine. With this note, I would like to urge this August session that it is crucial to act now in combating climate change, for later would be too late. Thank you, and Tashtele.
Thank you so much, Honorable Member from the Parliament of Bhutan, for your contribution. Let me quickly give the floor to Palau. If you would please limit your intervention to 2 minutes.
Thank you, Chair, and good evening from Palau. On behalf of the Senate and the Palau National Congress, please accept our sincere appreciation for the opportunity to join this auspicious occasion. It is an honor to work with like-minded leaders on climate action. The CVF Global Parliamentary Group provides a great opportunity for Palau leaders to forge partnerships, share best practices, and exchange ideas to help advance our mutual fight against the continuing battle with climate change and global warming. Palau, as you know, is a strong champion for the protection of the environment and a vocal leader to the international stage, including the United Nations and other high-level platforms. Our environment, our natural resources feeds our tourism economy, our food security, and our livelihoods. Unpredictable weather patterns, sea level rise, and other climate change impacts threatens our own way of life every day. As leaders, it is our responsibility to ensure our nation and people are resilient in the face of these environmental challenges. I look forward to establishing a strong partnership with members of the parliamentary group as we work to achieve our mutual goals. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Thank you so very much. I see that, and I can squeeze in one more intervention from the floor. I understand the Parliament of Rwanda is keen to make an intervention, and if you could kindly limit that to 1 minute, please. You have the floor. I believe it is Fulgence. Fulgence, you have 1 minute, please. Yes, sir. Please go ahead.
Thank you very much. Your Excellencies, distinguished colleagues, greetings from Kigali, Rwanda. We are very pleased to take part in this virtual event for the official launch of the CVF Global Parliamentary Group. And on behalf of the Parliament of Rwanda, I extend my thanks to the organizers for convening this event. It sends a strong signal about how serious our countries are in addressing climate change. In Rwanda, climate change is not an abstract reality. We are already seeing its impact. Prolonged droughts, as well as floods and landslides, have claimed lives, and the annual cost of climate-related disasters is estimated to be about 10% of our national budget, and it is a cost we cannot continue to sustain. Since the 1970s, the average temperature in Rwanda has increased by 1.4 degrees Celsius. If no substantive action is taken to mitigate global climate change, it is predicted that the average temperature in Rwanda will rise by 2.5 degrees Celsius by 2050. With these changes in our climate demand that we prepare and adapt to the new reality, future generations are depending on us to get it right. There is simply no other choice. This is why in Rwanda we are working across public and private institutions to respond to climate change and build our resilience in all sectors of our economy. One is climate actions are ambitious because that is what climate challenges demand, and we encourage all parliaments around the world to ensure their own efforts are as ambitious as possible.
Honorable, may I request you to shorten your intervention, please? We are running out of time.
Yes, we salute this initiative to bring parliamentarians to take part in driving climate action to reduce global warming and to speak with one voice to encourage the rest of the international community to do the same. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, sir. I would now like to move on to a very important section, and this is with regard to strategic partners that we will have to take us forward. And we will hear from a few select partners, some very brief comments and interventions. And I would now like to invite a representative from the Global Renewable Congress, and it's Mr. Stefan Schurig. You have the floor, Stefan.
Many thanks, Chair. It's great to listen to all of you regards into all directions. I first like to congratulate the global or the CVF, the Climate Environment Forum, to establish the Global Parliamentary Group. I think it really points to those change agents within transformation that are indeed in charge in understanding the broader context and transforming and translating it into ultimately binding legislation. Now, doing that, as we've heard already, requires a look on international negotiations. Obviously, we are all expecting the promises to be delivered now in Glasgow in terms of the 100 billion of finance and in terms of the rule book that really gives guidance on measuring, reporting and verification of how you actually calculate carbon emissions. But as a parliamentarians, you're turning on the border and you're not turning your back to your constituency only to look on international negotiations, but obviously you turn around and you focus on serving your constituency and you focus on national contexts and the contexts within your particular constituency. And that means one of the most important pillar of really addressing the challenges of climate change obviously is the transformation of our energy sectors towards renewable energy. And that is the idea of the Global Renewables Congress, to provide an international platform to really convene members of parliaments to address the most important questions about ramping up renewable energy. And make no mistake, we in particular with regard to the Climate Vulnerable Forum and the most vulnerable countries, we have two issues here. It's not just about a transformation from a carbon intense energy sector to a renewable sector, but it also is in many cases about energy access to electricity, replacing cooking facilities that run on charcoal. So it is many different issues that need to be addressed here, and a peer-to-peer exchange among parliamentarians and an exchange about parliamentarians with experts is really important, and to be organizing this in the international scale in terms of exchange about financial tools, innovation, research, is at the heart of the Global Renewables Congress. So I really I really like to thank here again, and I'm closing with this statement, and looking forward to hearing to you at the next interventions. Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Schurig, and we certainly look forward to working closely with the Global Renewable Congress. I think it's an important partner for the CVF Global Parliamentary Group to have, and we look forward to engaging with you. I would now like to move on and introduce Dr. Astrid Zivik from the G20 and V20-led Ensure Resilience Global Partnership. The V20 group of finance ministers of the CVF has put forward a sustainable insurance facility to protect micro, small, and medium enterprises, and to propel the development of domestic and regional insurance markets. You have the floor, Dr. Zivik.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, for inviting me to the launch of the Parliamentary Group. Dear Excellencies, distinguished audience, when climate-related hazards occur, pre-arranged and predictable financing through climate and disaster risk finance and insurance instruments is key to enable action and effective disaster response. The Injury Resilience Global Partnership, with its more than 110 members working in more than 100 countries, is the central global platform for the scale-up of climate and disaster risk finance and insurance, and it is jointly led by countries of the V20 group and G20+. Its Vision 2025 is to protect the lives and livelihoods of 500 million poor and vulnerable people against climate-related disasters, to safeguard development gains and economic growth and de-risk resilience investment. The Injury Resilience Global Partnership is also uniquely positioned to forge a global consensus on important aspects concerning risk financing. For example, to make risk finance and insurance solutions more affordable and sustainable. And tomorrow we'll discuss newly developed principles on smart premium and capital support in our High Steering Board. Another relevant topic and a key driver to promote more timely and reliable post-disaster response and better preparedness for climate and disaster risk change is the creation of an enabling regulatory framework and legal environment. This will strengthen the development of risk finance and insurance instruments by domestic and regional institutions, including the insurance industry. So suitable regulation can, amongst others, enable innovative insurance products. This is particularly important when it comes to customer groups, such as the micro, small, and medium-sized enterprises, Mr. Chair, you have mentioned, being also critical drivers of socioeconomic growth and the backbone of every local economy. Thus, a suitable regulatory environment will also support the new V20-led Sustainable Insurance Facility, which is a project pipeline and a development facility, to be launched soon at the COP26 with the aim of stimulating climate-smart insurance offerings from domestic and regional insurers for micro, small, and medium-sized enterprises. The facility is an important initiative supported by the Injury Resilience Global Partnership to achieve comprehensive resilience, and it's also currently funded already by Germany. I'm excited to see the first projects launched in the Asian Pacific region soon. How can we support you going forward, our dear V20 partners? In our network, we collaborate with partners with special expertise in this area of regulatory framework who can be mobilized in concerted efforts. For example, the initiative Access to Insurance is the implementation arm of the International Association of Insurance Supervisors on Inclusive Insurance, or the Law, Regulation and Resilience Policies Working Group of the Insurance Development Forum, dedicated to developing insurance laws, regulation, and public policy framework. So what's next on our agenda? The big question will work in the partnership's High Steering Committee tomorrow is whether the current global architecture for climate and disaster risk finance and insurance solutions is fit for purpose. This comprises all relevant instruments and corresponding institutional structures. So commensurate regulatory frameworks at international and national level are a key element for an effective and efficient global architecture. And the partnership will include this demand in its upcoming agenda and planning. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you so much, Astrid. And as you mentioned, I think this is a new introduction, and you're talking about new regulations, new frameworks at the global level. You're talking about architecture at national and regional levels. And I'm sure the CVF Parliamentary Group will be happy to engage and bring the parliamentary dimension into the important discussions going forward. Thank you for that view. We have almost come to the end of our session, but of course we need to hear from His Excellency Mr. Ban Ki-moon. I believe his statement is going to be delivered to us by Javier Diaz. So do we have the statement ready, Secretariat, please?
Yes, sir. Javier, you have the floor. Javier, I think we need to unmute your microphone. Javier, if you could unmute your microphone, please. I think we may be having some technical difficulties. Yeah.
Shall we move on or?
No, yes, sir. Yes, sir. We can move on.
So it was very enlightening, to hear from our partners. And of course, they are a very important part of this whole ecosystem that we are trying to build. And as we go forward, I'm sure there'll be lots of exciting opportunities for parliamentarians to engage. I say exciting because it's actually, we are breaking new ground. And we can really be the agents of change. We are the ones who can bring about the change. And one thing Mr. Ban Ki-moon would always share with me when I would interact with him during the formulation of the SDGs is that we as parliamentarians should never underestimate our ability to bring about change. I think that be a reminder of what our responsibilities are, the fact that we can bring change, and the change is what we are looking for. Business as usual is not the path forward, and we know action is needed, urgent action, and we as parliamentarians can move of our own. Of course, governments will move, the UNFCCC process will move, but we need not wait for them. We can create our own momentum and serve the people who have elected us to protect their lives and livelihoods. So it is with very great pleasure that I take this opportunity to officially launch the CVF Global Parliamentary Forum. Congratulations to everyone and our very best wishes. This is a big challenge for us, but I'm sure parliamentarians have never been the one to move away from responsibility. So let us take that responsibility and let us deliver the world that we want for our constituents, those who have voted us, and for our constituents who are going to be born tomorrow. So good wishes to everyone. Congratulations to the CVF Forum. I think the Secretariat has also done a great job. And it is now my pleasure to introduce the Special Envoy of the Climate Vulnerable Forum Presidency of Bangladesh, Mr. Abul Kalam Azad, for his closing remarks and statements and any thoughts that he may have going forward. He is someone whom we have worked very closely with. He's always available and he has also shown great leadership. Of course, he reports to the Prime Minister of Bangladesh, Her Excellency Sheikh Hasina, but it's great to have him amongst us. And today it's a real pleasure to invite him to say a few words. You have the floor, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Sabir Hussain Chaudhry. Congratulations. Congratulations to you, all the colleagues, all the parliamentarians. A big job done. This is a CGPG, CVF Global Parliamentarian Group. Excellencies and esteemed colleagues, I would like to comment by conveying my sincere thanks to all of you for joining us today through this virtual platform from across different time zones, despite your busy schedule. It's indeed a great privilege to be part of an illustrious panel of speakers, and my deepest gratitude for granting the opportunity to be an integral part of such an auspicious event on the occasion of the parliamentary group launch today. Esteemed speakers, since 2009, the Climate Vulnerable Forum has collaborated across governments of the most vulnerable nations and promoted ambitious climate action at home and abroad. As the focus of responding to the climate crisis shifts from international negotiations to national and locally led action, we strongly believe that the engagement of parliaments could assist the CVF to take forward its aim to protect nations and communities, and to build pathways to a more prosperous future. The parliamentary group has initiated in order to develop a collective cooperation among the 48 climate vulnerable forum countries to advance climate action globally. It gives me immense happiness to share with you that under the Bangladesh presidency of CVF, this parliamentary launch is going to be the first collaboration between the CVF parliamentarians. Dear parliamentarians, in order to mobilize the most effective response to the climate emergency, the formation of CVF Global Parliamentarians Group will enable parliamentarians from across the CVF member states to share valuable experience and good practices on legislative measures in support of ambitious and urgent climate action to safeguard communities and progress towards the CVF goal. The group will develop its own working method, particularly functioning as an online community of parliamentarians to drive ambitious and effective climate action in line with CVF goal and cross-cutting planetary prosperity agenda. The CVF Parliament's program aims to address and adopt effective legislative activities to promote the Paris Agreement implementation, Sustainable Development Goals, and Sendai Framework disaster risk reduction delivery, and also planetary prosperity. In pursuit of that aim, the parliamentary group has devised 3 key activities and 3 key objectives also. Enable parliamentarians from across the CVF member states to share valuable experiences and good practices on legislative matter to further the effort and progress towards the CVF goal. Number 2, promote collective climate commitment to overcome the obstacle in the path of climate action caused by political parties, both within the member states and international outreach. And third one, expedite the planetary prosperity agenda through measures such as creating more efficient permit and approval process, updating codes, enabling financing agreement, and promoting expertise, skills, and awareness. The CVF Parliamentarian Group also seek to build knowledge resources in the form of commission analysis and studies conducted by the CVF Secretariat and other knowledge partners to understand and improve legislative practices related to the CVF agenda among the member states. This may lead to the development of legislative framework that can guide crucial legislative measures to pursue the planetary prosperity agenda, the midnight survival deadline for the climate initiatives. Parliamentarians can also review their own legislations to validate the global agenda of climate change, carbon reduction, and climate finance. Furthermore, this parliamentarian group can serve as a powerful platform to engage dialogue and collaborative actions within and outside the member states in achieving climate action and responses. The short-term outcome of the establishment of the CVF Parliamentarian Group is expected to be the parliamentary resolution that would reinforce the executive mandate in delivering the Paris Agreement in DC in 2020. It would also take into account the challenges and consequences posed by the pandemic to develop the enhanced pandemic response and efforts in the field of climate change. This would be done through the active collaboration and representation of the member countries, all the while setting an exemplary leadership in the fight against climate change. Finally, the far-reaching goal would be the activation of CVF Parliamentarian Group and international outreach in adhering the 1.5 degree limit, developing delivery plan for the annual 100 billion and 50-50 split in fund between mitigation and adaptation, and enhanced cooperation within the South and South-South cooperation. Respected dignitaries, As we find ourselves amidst the global crisis caused by climate change, it is undeniable there is no alternative to internalizing the green development path. This path, however, is one that has to be treated by prioritizing climate resilient policies and actions. With this conviction, I would like to reiterate that the CVF Parliamentarian Group can be an instrumental platform in engaging the collaboration and coordinated efforts of CVF countries and overall addressing the threats of climate change to build the sustainable and innovative climate action. Let us meet together in COP26, raise our voice. Thank you all.
Thank you so very much, Mr. Abul Kalam Azad, for those very appropriate closing remarks. Honorable participants, distinguished guests, excellencies, you know, when a parliamentarian is chairing an event, it's never quite over. There's always something that's left behind. We were expecting the statement from Mr. Ban Ki-moon to be read by Javier. I believe that he is here now, so I will go to him in a second. But first, may I just check if anyone from UNDRR is present? They are, of course, a very important strategic partner. Irina, are you here?
It's actually Paula Brito. I'm the chief of branch.
Yes, yes,
And,
Paula. If you would just like to say a few quick words. We are almost to the end of our program.
Sure, I will try to keep it very succinct. First of all, excellencies, honorable parliamentarians, ladies and gentlemen, congratulations and a pleasure to be with you today. It is very interesting and important to see the launching of the Climate Vulnerable Forum Global Parliamentarian Group. The challenge that we have ahead do require targeted and active parliamentarian voices like yours. We all know that climate change is becoming the defining challenge for humanity, and all over the world, its effects are accelerating the frequency and impact of disasters. This last year alone, the world has seen devastating floods, droughts, extreme heat, and other hazards interacting with vulnerability made worse by the COVID-19 pandemic, resulting in severe health and economic impact. Currently, the bulk of resilience efforts focus on post-disaster recovery rather than on prevention. Our own recent report on disaster-related official development assistance shows that only around 50 cents out of every $100 goes towards disaster risk reduction, therefore undertaken before a disaster strikes, while the rest is spent on response and recovery. To effectively face increasing and more systemic risk, we need to turn this approach around and invest more in comprehensive disaster risk reduction strategies. We know that every $1 invested in risk reduction and prevention can save up to $15 in post-disaster recovery. And every $1 invested in making infrastructure disaster resilient saves $4 in reconstruction. And yet, this is not happening. Parliamentarian plays a central role in establishing the policy and the legislative basis for ensuring this shift, as well as to drive the implementation of the climate agenda goals contained in the Paris Agreement, the Sustainable Development Goals, and the Sendai Framework for Disaster Risk Reduction. At UNDRR, we work closely with parliamentarians all over the world through our cooperation with the International Parliamentarian Union, IPU. And as mentioned by His Excellency Martin Kongun, together, we raise awareness on the essential role of parliamentarians in building a more resilient future for humanity, and we help parliamentarians finding ways of fulfilling this responsibility. With this goal in mind, with IPU, we just published a toolkit for parliamentarians that highlights 10 actions they can employ to effectively influence and implement disaster risk reduction policy, legal, financial, and oversight framework adopted in the country's context. These actions include reviewing the amending sectorial legislation to integrate DRR, ensuring that parliamentarian oversight functions consider risk-informed decision-making, and developing DRR financing strategy for long-term investment, just to give you a few examples. And I hope and trust that the CVF Parliamentarian Group will look and take on board this practical toolkit available in UNDRR or IPU website. Let me use this important event to call once again for increased support for averting, minimizing, and addressing losses and damages through comprehensive strategies supported by the leadership of visionary parliamentarians and embraced by all society. UNDRA stands ready to help parliamentarians all over the world to develop and deepen their country's approach to disaster risk reduction and to create a more resilient planet for all. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Paula. And we at the Global Parliamentary Group of the CVF stand ready to engage with you. We now move to the end of the program. Again, Mr. Abul Kalam Azad, with your indulgence, I call upon Javier to make the statement on behalf of His Excellency, Mr. Ban Ki-moon.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Excellencies, parliamentarians, ladies and gentlemen, as part of the family of the GCA, I am the honor to deliver on behalf the message of Mr. Ban Ki-moon, Eighth Secretary of the United Nations and Presidency of the GCA, his message to this important event. I am pleased to share this message with you today to launch the CVF Global Parliamentary Group. Parliamentarians of climate-threatened nations have a crucial role to play in the fight against climate change. COP26 is now only days ahead. This meeting, highly anticipated, is our opportunity to restore confidence in the Paris Agreement. As things stand, we are failing on the promises we made in Paris. Finance pledges from developed countries have not been upheld as promised. The gap in climate action ambition also remains despite best efforts by the CVF as led by the Sheikh Hasina. The IPCC this year made it clear that certain impacts like extreme heat spells will need double in scale by 2030 when the world reach 1.5 degrees. This is why our forum, the CVF, is proposing with its Climate Emergency Pact, a pact to ensure delivery of 100 billion and an ambition raising for adaptation and mitigation at every COP. This is exactly what is needed to make 26 COP a success. We absolutely need adaptation effort to be on a level footing with emission cuts. The climate emergency is already all around us and no one is safe. As we need bold initiatives like the $25 billion African Adaptation Acceleration Program, AACP, which is led by the African Development Bank and GCA, we need them in every region. As parliamentarians, your action is vital. You are the ones that can drive the shift from international negotiations to real, on-the-ground, nationwide implementation. You are the ones that can make the necessary changes to regulations, public institutions, and finances to transform international promises into local action. Such changes can also catalyze greater international investment and support. I am encouraged to see today the launch of this new branch of the Climate Vulnerable Forum. I trust that this global parliamentary group will channel even more energy towards addressing the climate emergency. I am sure you will also support a climate emergency pact and its delivery by the parliaments worldwide. I look forward to see you I look forward to see all you will achieve together. The Global Center on Adaptation will certainly be there to support you and work with you as your managing partner. Congratulations for this milestone. Thank you very much indeed for this opportunity.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Javier, for reading out the statement of His Excellency, Mr. Ban Ki-moon. If you go to the chat box, his statement is also there. It's been posted. And for those who will be in Scotland, in Glasgow for the COP26, CVF will have an appropriate presence there. The Bangladesh pavilion will also be the pavilion for the CVF countries, as Bangladesh holds the presidency with Her Excellency Sheikh Hasina in the chair. So please do welcome, I welcome all of you to visit the pavilion. And of course, if you're in COP26, I look forward to seeing you all. Thank you, everyone. I think we have laid the foundations. Now the work starts. The forum, the group has been launched, and now we have to deliver. So let us work in complete solidarity and with the maximum possible commitment, because this really is an existential crisis, and we as parliamentarians are in the front lines of that battle. Thank you to everyone. Thank you, Mr. Azad, for so aptly wrapping up today's events. I thank our honorable and distinguished participants. We had honorable speakers of parliament, we had chairs of parliamentary committees, we had representatives from partners. So I think it was, we have a flavor of what the CVF parliamentary group is going to do as we move forward. So have a great morning, afternoon, evening, wherever you may be, and be safe, be well, and we will see you in our journey together. Thank you again.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Bye now.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.